Welcome to Spoiler Talk, where we talk spoilers. I'm Kieran, and with me is Jax.
Hey.
This week we are talking Signs, the 2002 science fiction thriller, written, produced, and directed by M. Night Shyamalan, also produced by Kathleen Kennedy.
I saw that.
Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Starring Mel Gibson, Joaquin Phoenix, Rory Culkin, and Abigail Breslin, who all of which have been acting for some time since and had very interesting, distinguished careers. I guess Rory Culkin would be the one that I would be least familiar with.
Yeah, I have no idea who that is. That's the boy actor, child boy.
Yeah, you can tell he's a Culkin. You know, he's got that face.
Yeah, a little bit. I feel like only now you're saying that. It didn't hit me when I was watching.
They all seem to be just such good actors, that family of...
How many are there? Because I know the Home Alone guy, but that's it.
So Rory Culkin and obviously Macaulay. But yeah, Signs is one of my favourite movies.
Oh wow! I don't think I remember you saying favoritist. That's a huge claim.
Yeah, I'm gonna come out and say it. I don't know if it's not my favorite movie, but it is up there in that the amount I've gotten out of it over the years and the amount of times I've rewatched it, and every time I look at it, I find kind of new things to get from it, whether it's just the filmmaking or the script or... I really like movies that the screenwriter really you can feel the work that they're putting into paying things off. It's one of the reasons, like, Back to the Future is, you know, just one of the best screenplays of all time. Like, it's just a perfect, everything set up gets paid off. Things kind of work out in ways you won't expect. And it's a very kind of simple story, really about going and rescuing your father from the underworld. But just packaged in a time travel 80s 50s nostalgia package, you know.
For a second, my brain just shut down because you're like saying time travel and all this stuff, and I'm like, oh no, I watched the wrong movie.
No. I'm commenting more.
You're talking about Back to the Future, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. I'm just commenting more on.
No, yeah.
When I watch a movie and all of the components meld together, all the performances, the direction, the script, every element is working for me at the same level. I would say there's only a couple of things in this movie that don't work for me that I'll get to, but they're kind of trivial and they don't undermine anything integral about the overall experience. And I think the issue people have with this movie is that they are trying to read it as something that it isn't, which M. Night Shyamalan obviously shortly after this derailed into just a filmmaking hellscape. I mean, The Village is after this, and that's probably, but it's the last half decent thing he did for a long time. So I agree. I'm not a big fan of The Village. I think that is the point at which he had, I guess, doubled down so far into the persona the public had created of him that he was doing a shtick and not trying to kind of outgrow it, which is why I think Signs is his best film, because it's the film that takes the Shyamalan formula. It gets packaged into a different, something we haven't seen. It's not just a thriller, it's a science fiction thriller, it's a kind of world-ending and alien invasion film, but it's all told through the perspective of a family experiencing it, just localized in one house.
Yeah, it's really, like, contained, which is awesome.
It feels even more, watching it now in 2020 with everything going on in the world, very, very, very accurate to how you and your family unit, however that takes shape, process information and bounce ideas off each other and go down rabbit holes and start to believe certain things. And all of it is kind of based on really the people you're interacting with in your community. Everybody in this film says their theory for what it is. This movie is as much an alien invasion film as it is an exploration of every possible scenario that an alien invasion can take place, and a meditation on what all of these things mean and how they tie back to our humanity and how we're probably just projecting that on what's going on. But, you know, the army general that Joaquin Phoenix talks to has his theory, and the guilty veterinarian who killed his wife has another theory. And really, almost everyone's right about what they say, because people are just throwing everything out. You know, people are throwing out ideas left, right, and center. It is funny that every time they listen to the book, it does seem to have the wrong information in it, though. Yeah. Dr. Babu's alien book that the son gets. But look, I said before the podcast that I would let you talk, and I haven't done a very good job of that so far. So
no. I think this is good because you said let's watch this. So you were the one that decided to watch this because you love this movie.
And because it felt like, oh, there's something to get out of this that we're seeing reflected in the real world at the moment. We were trying to do kind of lockdown movies.
Oh, yeah. And it's totally fitting in our Apocalypse Part 2, still in a lockdown. Yeah. Franchise of, what do they call it? No, like a series, a collection, as we're in lockdown. Yeah, to have that kind of theme. So I wouldn't have decided to pick Signs. I wouldn't have wanted to pick any M. Night Shyamalan movies because then I'd have to watch the M. Night Shyamalan movie. Because I would say that for the longest period of time, since I can remember, M. Night Shyamalan has been probably like... There'd be worse directors. There'd be worse creators and worse people who make content. But he's probably my least favorite director, to the point where I enjoy how much I dislike him. I find his filmmaking style atrocious. I remember watching The Village like on TV one time and just I couldn't believe what I was watching. Avatar: The Last Airbender, his movie, is like that's the one that kind of reinforces for me all my dislikes and all like everything I believe. I like watch that movie, I'm like, I'm right. I'm right. He's the worst. And I think everything stems from his first movie, The Sixth Sense, which I remember watching in like year 7 or 8, and we started watching it, and I'm like, that's the twist. Spoilers, he's fucking dead the whole time. It's super fucking obvious. It's the only thing that could be happening, and it's obvious straight away. And I remember calling it, and I just hated him for so long. But I watched this movie today, and I wasn't sure if I'd seen this before, or if I'd only seen Scary Movie 3 or Scary Movie 4 or whenever that was. So I chucked it on. We had this whole discussion as well. You're like, should we watch horror movies at nighttime and this and that? And due to a whole bunch of circumstances, I wasn't able to watch it at night this week. Watched it this morning. I watched it this morning at about 6 in the morning, so it was still kind of dark. But it started, and as soon as it started, I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. It's a bit of a psycho Danny Elfman-esque kind of combination, like this song. It's just like, and it's like, I was like, oh yeah,
sets the tone for what's coming.
Yeah, it's like it's got that sci-fi, science fiction-y kind of like ooh, like kind of eerie sounds to it and stuff. But then it starts, and I don't know exactly what the first few scenes are, but it's playing out, and I'm watching, and then within 20 minutes, I'm like, fuck you, Keiran. I can't say that every film he's made now is a piece of shit. Because this is great. This movie's awesome.
Oh, and then God.
So I kind of wish for content I had come into this with the same feeling I had last week.
I mean, I'm happy you like it, but I'm sad that we don't get to finally have a big disagreement on this podcast. But yeah, no, continue.
I have some issues with a few things towards the end, but I don't know if they're issues, but I kind of laughed. I don't know if I should have. But the thing this film does that I think a lot of films really struggle with, and I don't know if this was because he couldn't afford to show the aliens or anything like that, but it starts, and the first 3, maybe 4 full times the aliens are in it, it's fucking cool, man. It's so like creepy, and you see just enough. Like the first time, it's just like a shadow of like, I know it's an alien, but it's like a shadow of a man, like creature kind of thing. Yeah, by the chimney. And it kind of, to me, was like this perverted Santa Claus like imagery, which I was just immediately like, ooh. Like I just remember being like, ooh, oh, because I have this image, and it's the image. I don't want to get to the end right away because I want to stay positive for a bit. But what I remember, I think, is I've seen the last 10, 20 minutes of this movie, and I think that's a real disservice to what the actual movie is. Because I think this movie's setup is perfect. Like, just even with these little things where you're like, oh, there's like, I don't know, just like, oh, that's what it is. He wakes up, and he's just kind of like, I don't know, a bit like, oh, a bit, and you can kind of sense
wrong.
something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Everyone
off.
has this feeling. Even the dogs have this feeling. Everyone has this like really, really, and it's actually conveyed through the film at various points. And you might have noticed that I watched this movie like I have been doing a lot of movies with headphones, with good quality headphones. Which I have to really say, if you're gonna watch Signs properly, the sound design in this movie, the mixing, the editing, whatever it is top notch. And there are so many little sound cues that I think you miss when you don't really get to sit and listen to it. If you don't have a spectacular sound system, get yourself a good pair of headphones that you don't have to fuck around with, that don't detract from the movie. I've just got big, comfy headphones that can sit on my head for hours and I don't notice, and the sound is excellent. But there's a few moments in the movie where we'll get a shot of the field and the crickets are chirping, and the only sound cue is the crickets stop. Because as crickets, and it happens, I think 2 or 3 times throughout the film and the characters pick up on it. There's one moment when Mel Gibson is looking out the window just before everything goes down. The crickets are chirping and they stop.
I don't think I did notice that. Yeah.
And if you don't, the movie, I think, is still working on enough levels of sustaining the suspense because it's doing such an effective job that losing that element doesn't take you out. You're not missing the experience of the film. You could almost watch it silent and still get everything going on because it's such a visual movie. But the little touches like that, I think, are what elevates it. And you're right, the not showing the aliens is all the strongest stuff in the movie. And the elements that don't work for me at the end are when they start getting too flippant with showing it. And that really, I think...
The final sequence where they actually have one, the survivor, like, of the alien, when they...
But he also shows so much restraint with the reveal, and they shoot around it almost the entire time. There's only 3 shots that don't work. Yeah, like showing
Which ones are they for you?
Showing it in the reflection of the TV is perfect.
It's so good.
Showing it through the glasses of water. Showing it from the window outside and the kid looking in. Showing it as the windows kind of... The windows have been broken behind it, the boarded up windows.
And the light's shining through,
and
so
it's hazy,
got a weird
and you
silhouette.
can't...
Yeah, that stuff was really clever.
2 or 3 close-ups where the visual effects just are not up to par for you to show it at that angle. And if you cropped in a bit more, or you just were as creative as you were in these other areas, the movie would be perfect. But that's what keeps it from being, I would say, perfect for me, is just... If you showed a little bit more restraint. I could edit this movie to be the perfect experience, I think. You could just trim those
just
bits.
Getting rid of a few little shots, yeah.
Yeah, and it's yeah, go on.
Well, I was just going to say, I don't actually think that seeing it, because I actually think that because it's over and it's like that weird kind of, they've dealt with it, and so they come out and I kind of know that something's going to happen. But I think that's the whole feeling. Like, you're like, oh, is there going to be one, something going to still happen? And then seeing it in the TV and it's kind of hunched over and it's really creepy. And I think the thing that's so good is at first it's like, what is happening? And then you realize he's holding a little boy character. I forgot his name, but he's holding that like pincer thing on his hand over it. And it just, I think it still works, and you do need to see it, I think, at one point, but I don't know, maybe just frames here and there, but I don't even necessarily think it doesn't work, because the film is so kind of not drawn out, but we only get little bits of the alien, so I think you do kind of need that cathartic visual, I think, maybe.
Yes,
I don't know. I know. Maybe not though.
I know why it's there. I'm just saying that when we get a in-focus, clear, just standard shot of the alien and see its eyes, And the other shot I can think of is when the glass of water falls on its shoulder. What?
Yeah, actually, and it's burning, and the blood, and it's like that's the water hurts it shot. That's a bad one.
You see it too clearly, and you see it too
for sure.
And it's only because they do such a good job the rest of the time that bothers me, because that's a shot from a lesser movie in this one. Like, you've done such a good job and all the hard work that you don't actually need to do that, and you create a more effective experience out of your film. But you can have that shot and just crop into the shoulder burning just for a split second, so we get that visual.
Understand the character stuff. Because for me, I think the best part was when he's running through the crop field. Also, once I realized this movie was like the alien crop field movie, I was like, I think I'm in. Like that first scene where the son's just like, shut up, dad, and he grabs his dad's head and like moves it. That classic, like, I'm moving you to look at the thing I'm looking at. I love that. And then it just pans out and then it gets to that big wide and it's just like...
And it's real.
I'm so in at that point. It looks so good, yeah.
It's fantastic. They shot it on I think, university agricultural farm where they just got to grow whatever. I was reading up on it last night. The location of this film, the setting, and the... I don't know, I guess simplicity of it and the effectiveness of it all. We talk about TV shows being like a space you like. There's something I really like about this space.
It's awesome.
We spend very little time outside of it, apart from some flashbacks, and when they go into town very briefly at the beginning, the entire film is...
just them on their farm, just kind of experiencing this. What I really liked is that they turn on the news and it wasn't like local farm led by Mel Gibson has crop. It's like
it's global news, and they're just such a tiny piece of.
I just thought that was an interesting thing, just in terms of like that's a pretty common thing. Like it kind of reminded me of like saying like Deep Impact, where it's like we're over here in this country, we're over here, and it's like the whole point is that we're getting these widespread. What I loved is that this is one thing, but when they turn on the news, it's not like their area. It's like they're like, in India, this crazy shit's happening. It's pretty fucked. And like I love that they were like over Mexico City, they're within 1 kilometer, and so they go, fuck, that means they got to be 1 kilometer from us because there's a crop circle here. And that just kind of, I don't know, I just thought that the way that was all built was really cool. It didn't feel silly and dumb. It didn't feel like we were watching the only people in the world who are dealing with aliens. Do you know what I mean? It just felt like, well, how many fucking families happen to be close to the crop circles? And of course, we're just following one of them. And I think that was a really clever take, because the whole film for me, which I was really surprised about, because I remember this movie is the one, like I knew this movie before I'd seen it, even if I maybe had seen it as a kid, but it's the movie where the aliens come, but then they're like, oh no, it's water. Let's leave.
No.
It's not that at all. No.
That's a big...
That's a moment that...
The main misreading of the film. But you hear on the radio in the cellar, the morning before they come out, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. The guy on the radio says, this wasn't a takeover. They weren't here for our planet. They were here for us. They're harvesting us. That's why they were trying to get into the house. What they were essentially doing was what the film essentially is aliens have come, charted areas of the earth with little to no rainfall, or areas that they can, hotter areas that they can land in, snatch and grab people. So it's the first part of it is a reconnaissance mission, and that's what we see the aliens doing at the beginning of the movie, where there's just one or two in certain areas scoping out what's going on, but not interacting with people and not getting involved with anyone.
Yeah, just creeping on rooftops.
And lots of people have sightings of weird things, and people have theories about what they're doing, and we hear it all kind of echoed throughout the movie. And then it's not until that night, and it's when the news officials start going, all right, something is like heating up here, and we are like...
They're coming for us, yeah.
Mel Gibson says, there's a point where you realize that you are on your own. And when he opens the closet and the TV broadcast is just, it's off. He's like, oh.
It's begun.
It's on, yeah. The alien, they've all come out of their ships at once, And they're just doing a big snatch and grab of every person they can get. Essentially, that's what the movie is. And a lot of people, I think because it's communicated indirectly and through things we're hearing third hand from other people, which is exactly how we would get all the information in an event like this. We wouldn't know what's going on, and we would just be hearing theories. But almost every theory is correct that we hear in the movie and fits within the plot of the movie. You know, it's a recon mission, scoping out how many people they are, and then they're coming. And there's obviously, when they come to the house, there's 4 of them or whatever it is. They can't get into the house. They give up, leave. And then at the end, it's the alien that got locked in the pantry and left behind.
Yeah, true, yeah. And then he gets all dangerous and he's like, I'll kill your kid!
Yeah. And essentially what probably happened was it went back to where the crop circle was, which is their house, realized that it's been abandoned, and has just come inside for for cover or whatever. Yeah. Like, probably just scrambling, you know? It's just like a person being left behind on an alien world.
Yeah, it's a really cool... Yeah, I like that ET twist at the end where they were just like in the basement and they're like, hey, we did it. They ran away. We got them. Don't even stress about it. And they're like, oh, what? That's cool. Like, it reminded me of in Starship Troopers when when the movie's about, like, the characters have had their resolution, but they haven't defeated the aliens, and then just another, like, that other side character from earlier in the movie is like, I did it. I caught the big brain. They're all like, woo, you did it, bro. And then all the heroes of the movie are like, yeah, you side character, you did it. You saved everyone. And it's that fun, like, look at that. Our heroes don't need to fucking end or save or do everything. They don't need to be, like, they had their character journey that, like, we've, I don't know. They didn't have to Harry Potter at the end and be the saviors. And I thought that was really fun. And I think that's awesome about this film as well. It's just a family. And, like, there's bits where they're like, there might be navigation. That's what the crops. And then later he's like, here's the news thing. And he's like, that's what it was. I'm right. And, like, but maybe you're right. Maybe, and it's just them living. And then because it's a movie, I think you do need that fight scene. Oh, I don't necessarily fight scene, but I just think that, the only aspect of the film I thought was a bit like, it almost worked for me. But he's like, swing that bat.
Swing away.
Joaquin Phoenix, bloody swing away. And then he's like, eyes go up to the bat. He's like, oh shit. And he grabs the bat slowly. And the alien's like, what's this? I better slow down my actions and watch this. And then he just gets beaten with a baseball bat. And I think that scene is like maybe 25% too like silly and self-serious for me. Just in terms of like his wife said the swinging thing and it all kind of connected at once to be a bit silly. And like, I don't know. I think knowing the water twist at the end made all the water cups and the daughters like, I don't like this water. It's dirty. It's got this and that. And it felt just like a bit of a weird setup just to put all these glasses of water in the house so that you could hit them over the alien at the end. And I just think that aspect of the film could have been filmed better.
But then the whole film doesn't work for you because that's all the movie is essentially these characters are all in this position together at this point in time, and you are either one of two people. And it's very clear by your comment now that in maybe the most important scene in the movie with Mel Gibson sitting on the couch with Joaquin Phoenix, and they're talking about...
I liked that
Yeah,
scene.
because you're the other type of person. You don't look at all of these events together and come out going that it's a miracle. You are the you're the Mel Gibson character at the start of the film. So you look at these series of events and you say, that's why I think the film's perfect, because the reaction to the film splits people into the two camps that they talk about in the film. And the people who say it doesn't work, it's like everything that happened, the kid's asthma, the fact that the brother's living with them again, the fact that the cop says earlier in the movie, you're doing a good thing by staying with him, and you're helping.
Yeah,
he's like, I don't feel like I'm helping at all, and she's like, you are, you absolutely are, and that's really the film. It's kind of shown every time they use the baby monitor. It's a little hokey, but it's kind of sweet. Every time they're all touching, every time they're all together, the signal becomes clear on the monitor. You know?
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't actually notice that, but
Or the closer they get, the more they touch. Every time there's contact between them, the signal gets a bit clearer and clearer, and then when they kind of break that contact, the signal disappears. And it's a kind of metaphor for what's going on in the film, in that at the end, if the girl wasn't doing this crazy thing she'd done, probably because she's just lost her mother and doesn't know how to deal with it, because she's too young. She doesn't even know who the guys who killed her mum. She's just unaware of everything going on and is a bit lost. And her dad's lost. And her dad's completely lost his faith. It's really well kind of visualized. One of the first shots of the movie, it's like a shot of the wall in the upstairs of the house and looking into his bedroom. And I think it's when he hears the daughter scream and you see there's like an imprint of a cross on the wall. Like the cross was there for a long time. And then
but now it's gone.
Yeah, like you get all the information you need through the opening shots of like who this guy is, and then it's kind of reiterated a few times, and that will probably be the other thing. It's like showing too much of the alien, and the other thing that now works for me, I think a little time when I rewatch it, is that he does feel a little bit too much like he has to reinforce a lot of his ideas in the film by showing clips earlier, which I think that it can work sometimes to show a clip earlier in a film as a callback, but it has to be... I mean, the conversation Mel Gibson and Joaquin Phoenix has feels like the central point of the movie and the central thesis of the movie. And I don't think that you need to cut back to that. I think you put enough import into that scene
100%.
By your delivery, and I was invested in what you were going through. You didn't need to cut back to it later. You didn't need to cut back to the shot of the pantry when we see the alien's fingers are cut off. You know what I mean? He doesn't.
It's maybe a product of like a time. I feel like that stuff happened in movies.
2002.
And now
it felt a lot fresher. And you know, when
it's like a style, like remember this, but it hits you quickly because it's not like, I don't know. I think that's a style, and I think we've just grown out of that style as viewers.
I think these reasons are symbolic of M. Night Shyamalan's entire career, and every movie that works or doesn't work boils down to whether he is willing to restrain himself. And I think that the more restraint he shows in his storytelling, and generally the less money he has, the more he has to actually work on telling an interesting story and having everything stripped back, the better a filmmaker he is as a result. Which is why most people think Unbreakable, Sixth Sense, and Signs are his best movies. Although most people say Unbreakable or Sixth Sense.
I haven't rewatched either in so long, but holy shit, there's no way they're better than this. Like because I'm remembering them movies. This is really good. Like I was so shocked.
I think Sixth Sense is a good movie. The problem with his movies and the trajectory of his filmography is that he was trying so hard to sustain the idea of what people thought he was. And going back to what I was saying earlier, Signs is able to transcend that. And it's kind of brilliantly shown through the use of music. When we hear the music cues at the beginning, the opening of the film, it's creepy, unsettling. It really is setting the pace of what's coming. And then at the end of the film, the music perfectly transitions into a redemptive, light, hopeful, transcendent theme at the end of the movie, but it's the same theme. And it's amazing that the film is able to deliver its kind of twists that the audience expect from an M. Night film, but that's not really what it's about. It's not about the twist. We've already discussed what the movie's about, and the revelations of the brother being good with the bat, the kid leaving water everywhere, the asthma attack, the wife not being there so that the brother is there, trying to take care of his family, and all of these things falling into place, and this tragedy befalling the family enables our central character to go from being one type of person to another type of person. And whether those things are fate or not is irrelevant to the story being told here. Whether you're one person or the other person watching the movie, coming out the other end of it and going, that was silly, or coming out the end of going, oh, it was amazing how it all kind of coalesced together. It doesn't really matter to the central point of the story was that he chose to walk away from this experience symbolized in the ultimate form of becoming a priest again.
Yeah.
But he walks away being, a man of faith. He didn't even really ever lose his faith in God. The scene where his son has the asthma attack and he's in the cellar. He says, I hate you. I hate you. He's talking to God. He never lost faith in anything. He just stopped being person A and became person B. He went from optimist to cynic. And all of this affected his relationships. His relationship with his brother, his relationship with his children. Becoming that other person again. As a result of just wanting to take these things out of life. Instead of looking at things cynically like he was doing the entire movie. It's just a better way to live. And I think it's a good message the movie has. Whether you're religious or not is irrelevant. It's just living your life in that manner and walking into situations and taking lessons from things and thinking that there might be meaning to things and a positives that you can put out into the world that you can reap back, and terrible things are going to happen to you and you can choose to be one of those two people. It's probably going to be better for you if you choose to be that person that sees a miracle. I like the central message of the movie. I like that the way it's conveyed through all of the characters. I like the arc that the central character has. I love the way it's conveyed through the filmmaking, through the script, through the visuals, through Mel Gibson's performance. I just, everything kind of fits together here, and the whole movie is a pretty damn good package. What I want out of a, 2-hour something piece of entertainment that is tackling so many different things and manages not to feel like an unruly mess. But really the biggest complaint people walk away with is it's dumb that the aliens who didn't like water went to a planet with lots of water.
It's funny because that's the thing that's the only thing I remember from this movie. Like, I even forgot that it was like crops, like that scene where it's like, it's the soda. I've watched 16 soda commercials. I was like, what the fuck? Hit and Run, the Simpsons video game, Hit and Run, one of the greatest video games of all time. Its whole central premise is that like the aliens are poisoning everyone with Duff Cola. And I was like, what the fuck? That whole video game is a parody of this fucking movie. It just blew my fucking mind. But that whole thing with the water, that is an aspect of the movie where, like, I think because of pop culture, it's like, it crossed my mind quicker than it would have. But it is like they've come to harvest human beings. We're like 80% water or some bullshit or whatever, 70% or whatever. It does feel a bit hokey, but I think it's hokey because of things you've mentioned now, like there's 3 seconds in the movie that don't hold up visually. And one of them is of glass water falling on a full body shot of an alien. And its shoulder goes red. And it's like that second of footage is hokey and dumb. And I think that just takes people over the edge a bit. Because I think if I wasn't into the movie up to that point, I would have been like, yeah, no good. But I was so into the faith man. Because I kind of saw what was happening. I was like, he's lost his faith. His wife's died. M. Night Shyamalan killed his wife, which I thought was so weird. Like, he's like writing the script. He's like, I've just killed this guy's wife. That's so awful. Maybe I should act in it as well. And it's like, I don't know if you should be in your movie if one of the most emotional moments in the movie is you falling flat acting while Mel Gibson is like unable to respond to him when he's in the car. I don't know. I burst into laughter when he appeared. And the family just looks at him and he looks at them and he's like, ooh, and gets in his car. Because I sensed who he was going to be in the end. And I don't know. I genuinely think, man, because like, I don't know. There's just this, M. Night Shyamalan is such a name. To me, he's way beyond like, it's like when Tarantino is in his movies. I'm not like, look at this nuanced character, this Australian character he is. I'm just like, Tarantino, what are you doing in your movie?
That's what I think the difference is, though. Is Tarantino I mean, Tarantino putting himself in the movie, like, when it's a bit like in Pulp Fiction.
Even that, I'm like, what are you doing?
I mean, he's saying the N-word a bunch of times, and it's really like...
Not even that. It's just like, what's he doing? Just chewing scenery in a movie. There's just something in my brain, I think, with certain directors that I think I'm putting onto it, though. Because, like, honestly, if this is the first M. Night Shyamalan movie I'd seen and I didn't know who he was, I bet you I would have thought it was a great Norse performance. Because, like, you're not wrong. I wasn't like, oh, look at him. It just felt like he was in the movie being like, Mel Gibson, I killed your wife. And I'm like, why are you in your own movie? What's that? I don't know. I don't know. I think I've just got too much of a perception of him and as a director.
For sure. I mean, I think it's probably, like, now looking back and especially considering what he then attempts to do in Lady in the Water, it does feel like a weird author insertion into my product. But I don't care about it here because at no point does it override anything going on in the movie. It never becomes more really important. Doesn't. He's just a supporting role that really... I mean, you get Gary Oldman to do that bit. It doesn't change anything. Really. It's just a bit less distracting in an earlier scene and you would just go, oh, it's Gary Oldman instead of, oh, it's the director. You know, like... You could put anyone in that role. I just don't really feel like... Whereas in Lady in the Water, later in his career, he writes himself very heavily into the movie and then writes movie critics into the movie and then it's no good. It's really maybe I have a subconscious recollection of the scenes you're discussing because I feel like you saying that is what I feel like. Even though that's not what that movie... Like, yeah, I don't know. He was totally fine. You're absolutely right. I think it was just seeing him, and I just kind of was like, yeah, I don't know. It's so trendy now to shit on him. And I think that I just don't like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And I think there's a lot of bathwater in his case. And I think his career, essentially from... Signs, from The Village all the way up to the found footage movie he did is just various stages of no good. And I will defend The Sixth Sense.
I mean, I've never rewatched it.
Unbreakable, I will actually defend to a lesser degree because I think that has more problems than Sixth Sense or Signs do. And I think that Split is the perfect case where he has detached himself from really trying to be more than he's trying to be and just focusing on telling like a weird little story again, which ended up getting re-bogged down back into the M. Night Shyamalaniverse and then tying back and trying to create a trilogy, which then... He kind of falls down again. You know, you watch essentially this man start at a sprint and then trip and stumble for the better part of a decade.
And they just crawl.
But then get back up for a sec and then fall back over. And I actually, Glass worked for me, I think, more than it worked for a lot of people. But it's also, it's not a hill I'm going to die on. I'm not going to really defend that film too much because I think it's an excellent film had it come out in 2007. But it ain't 2007 anymore. Yeah. In 2008, comic book movies fundamentally changed and M. Night Shyamalan did not change with them. So if it came out, if you had, you know, Unbreakable in 2000 and then Split a couple of years later and then Glass in 2007, right before... We had Iron Man and The Dark Knight kind of come in and flip the table. That trilogy works in that era. The problem is that his career took a nosedive and he never, I guess, got to do these ideas he was toying with, but came back way later. And now it all just feels really antiquated. And I enjoyed it more as this is that filmmaker I once loved doing a pretty good job with these people, but it all just kind of falls down at the end, which I gotta say, like, I'm entertained, like rewatching Split and Glass, like being in the cinema for Glass again and being reinvested for that moment in time until I walked out of the cinema And I was like,
Yeah.
he's just... When I walked into Glass, I was like, he might do it. And when I walked out, I was saying, he's just a person.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've not actually seen Glass, but I watched Split before it was the Splitiverse or whatever. And everyone's like, he's back. He made a movie and it's real good. And I just watched it. And I was like, 15 minutes in, I was like, I literally cannot do this to myself. James McAvoy is fucking chewing, I don't know, what do you call it? Chewing too much scenery. All the scenery. I found it cringy, found it painful, found it dumb. And I didn't finish it. And I've seen a YouTube video, or like 10 YouTube videos about Glass. And the last scene is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. But I've seen it out of context. So,
yeah.
I don't know. I just think that I'm at that point with M. Night Shyamalan. Like, I remember making a web series when I was in year 12, and there was an episode I never ended up filming because we stopped it. But it was about M. Night Shyamalan, and he was like, the main characters of the show got a role in the new M. Night Shyamalan movie. And like, I just remember I watched all his films at a time, almost hate watching them. So I think I've just locked into that. Because he's an easy punching bag because he's a twist. He falls into the same thing he made every film. But man, his fucking filmography, it takes such a dark turn. The Happening, Avatar: The Last Airbender, the Will Smith one that he didn't really direct, but technically he did, and just the fucking Visit, The Village. There's just so much dumb shit. I just find it like kind of baffling because this movie, I feel like, is really competently made. It's really like...
The Happening is what happens to Signs when his sensibilities go awry. And maybe he doesn't have a few people around him going, rein it in here.
That movie is like the same in terms of... This movie is like people's criticism is they don't like water. That's dumb. And then The Happening is the trees, the wind is out to get us or whatever. That's dumb. But the movie doesn't actually, when you watch it, transcend. And it is just that dumb idea with a bunch of weird, oddly comical suicide scenes and stuff like that.
Yeah, all his movies are dumb ideas and executed at different levels of precision.
I don't know if this is a dumb idea, though. The idea of a man of
Sure
faith.
it is, because
but like, it's a man of faith, and then aliens, something that completely disregards God and all these things, brings him back into faith. I think that's a genius idea. When I realized, when the movie ends and he's just in the priest outfit again, and there's one shot of it, his kids are laughing in the other room, it's like, that's perfect. I think that's really good stuff. I don't know.
I think it is too, but
different.
I think that if you have 2008 M. Night Shyamalan directing exactly the same movie, he has detached himself from reality by that point, and he left the production company and producers he worked with on those early films, and Lady in the Water was a big turning point in his career for more reasons than one. The people he worked with started to tell him that his ideas were not good, and he didn't listen to them.
Oh no.
And you can really, and Lady in the Water is when he changes, the people distributing his films, the production company. Like, what he does is he goes from working with kind of the best people working at the time, and we can shit on Kathleen Kennedy now, but Kathleen Kennedy is one of the best film producers of all time. Or you just scroll through her filmography and look at the list of classics. She was in her A game at this point in time, and she does a great job because everything comes together in this film pretty damn well, except for the couple of things I've outlined, which doesn't break the film for me. But
no, not at all.
I think that a lot of the restraint he shows and a lot of what he's focusing on is different now. And I think what happened was Signs and The Village started to beat him down, where critics started to diverge from appreciating the elements of his story. Like, Signs isn't about the twist at the end.
No, it just happens to happen at the end.
It's about so much other, more interesting, it's about so many things, yeah? And the fact that it got distilled into the water alien movie is such a fucking bullshit move. And it's the same thing with Lost.
Yeah, that's actually the first thing that occurred to me. It's like the same as Lost ending, which is infuriating beyond.
It's you misunderstood the piece of content this person was creating and have doubled down so hard in the criticism with a bunch of other people who misunderstood it that you're actually not even paying attention to the ideas the films are presenting. And I'm not saying that you can't say this is a bad movie because you don't understand it. I'm saying that so many times over and over and over, I just see the film being misrepresented as something that it isn't, and you're not giving any credence to the actual ideas in the film. Your criticisms of the movie just are meaningless to me because, all right, I get it. Like, I think lots of things are dumb ideas. I think The Happening is a long list of dumb ideas, and there's all. But I think with the right sensibilities and getting M. Night Shyamalan with the right crew at the right point in time and reworking that and getting different actors in and you know, having Mel Gibson and Joaquin Phoenix say your dumb dialogue
makes it so less dumb. Yeah.
so much better than fucking
He's
Mark
so good in this
Wahlberg, who
movie.
doesn't know what he's doing, who's miscast, who's in the wrong place at the wrong time doing
It's
the
the
wrong
bees.
things.
Wait, is that like he thinks it's bees or something at first? Just talking about bees pollinating, and it's like
I don't know. I've watched that movie only in as a comedy with friends to shit on it. It's just it's a different thing to me. It's the best comedy film of all time. Like
yeah.
It's his sensibilities run so awry that it's just hilarious to watch, and it's what any person can do when you start listening to the wrong people and when you start taking your genius for granted, because he was never a genius. He was just very good at... these are just 2-hour productions that he puts out into the world and people react to. And for about 10 years, every 2 or 3 years, he got really good at crafting a 2.5-hour piece of entertainment that people went and sat in a big dark room and reacted positively to. And then at a period of time, he stopped listening to the people, to the team around him that were helping him make these things great, and doubled down into what he thought made them great, which was what everyone was telling him, you're the next Spielberg. Well, you know what? Spielberg's made some fucking dumpster fires of movies.
Oh, yeah.
And still, Spielberg has let his sensibilities and let the people around him talk him into bad ideas. See Indiana Jones 4, you know?
Yeah, you don't even need to list the other examples, which there are many. It's like, that's such a, it's so bad compared to like his early stuff.
And he works with so many different people, and he is an effective filmmaker and he does a good job, but he's also not a writer. Like, he gets other people to write his script. So sometimes people don't write a good script. And then sometimes the script that he's got, he's reinterpreting in a Spielbergian way, and it doesn't mesh with the ideas that are underlying AI.
I have not actually seen that.
And it's not a bad film, and it kind of works, but it would be a way better Kubrick film than it would a Spielberg film.
Doesn't it have that has the Sixth Sense kid in it, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the reason I've not watched it.
he does a great job. He's
Oh, no, I'm sure he's amazing. I just think... But I see that actor now. Like, I saw a post recently where it's like, the actor from The Sixth Sense talks about what it's like to be an adult that was a child star. And I just saw his face. I'm like, I don't know what it is. It's like, I've like PTSD from watching that movie. I just hate it so much. I think it's just when people say something's great and I think it's not, it's just, I snap and I'm like, I'm standing on this side of the sand and I refuse to change my mind. Like, I've just become a bigot for no reason.
We were never able to just walk into a cinema and
no, I didn't see it in the
sit down out of nowhere and not have any expectations for The Sixth Sense.
No, to be fair,
because this guy was
I was
nobody.
told it was a twist. Yeah, I was told it was a film with a twist. So I didn't guess a twist out of nowhere. So there's a lot of leading up to why I might not like it. And I've never seen it again, so maybe I'll love it.
It's not just a twist. It's
of course not.
There are 3-4 scenes in it that became like pop culture staples. Like, this movie was so massive and had such a profound effect on how audiences saw movies going forward. And it had a profound effect on his career, because Sixth Sense isn't his first movie. It's like his 3rd or 4th, yeah?
What?
Yeah. People forget that...
I genuinely don't believe you. That's madness.
That became his shtick. But he was very good at that type of thing. And Sixth Sense was he had an overwhelming reaction to what happened. So of course you double down. Like, if you create a piece of content that people so effectively engage in, it literally changes the way people view and process and write and create entertainment, because that's what it did. Yeah. And how people talk about entertainment and how people talk about spoilers. And you have such an effective... That movie became something so much larger. And then everybody for this entire period of time is saying, you are the wonder child, you're going to bring... And then he kind of backs it up with Unbreakable.
And then, and then Signs, for sure. So there's 3 films in a row that are good. Like,
and where he's doing a similar type of thing, which is like, what he's doing is he's taking you on a very effectively crafted thriller ride through the lens of first supernatural, then superhero, and then science fiction. And through these genres is effectively doing the same kind of thriller-esque format, and then packaged with a revelation or a twist that makes you think back on what you've just seen at the end. Yeah, that's what he's doing in all 3 cases.
What's the twist of Unbreakable? That he isn't unbreakable?
It's that Samuel L. Jackson's the bad guy and that he's a super.
Oh, is that a twist?
It doesn't work. It doesn't.
Isn't
work
he the villain from The Go? Isn't he like, I'm an evil man in a wheelchair and I'm all glassy? No, that's the end, is it?
Yeah, and it's done. It's done really poorly. It's the worst of the 3.
Oh, okay, that's fascinating to hear, because I'm just thinking Signs doesn't even... I was just going to say Signs, because I'm just suddenly realizing he's the twist guy. He's always putting twists in, but it's like Signs isn't really a twist. It's just they're in the basement. He thinks they're going to die. He gives up because his brother's like, oh, "You gave up, you son of a bitch. Don't do that again," which is such a great little brother moment, because he doesn't emotionally do anything like that, but then he's like, "Hey, I'm bloody serious, mate. I'm your brother. Listen." But the thing is that, like, he's given up, and then because of course they don't stop the apocalypse. The apocalypse is just stopped because go humans, America or whatever. But like, we defeat them because we figured out the water thing or whatever. But then it's kind of like it's his realization. I feel like that he did give up and that he shouldn't have, and then like I don't know. I think like that's the movie. It's not really. Oh, and twist, they die from water. It's like, that's just the thing that happens at the end. That's
that
like,
triggers the change in his character.
Yeah, it's unrelated. It's just something had to happen. So he picked something that could be there in the house, I feel. And then it's also like he saw War of the Worlds and was like, air. Air's like, and he tried to just think of another element. It was like, I guess it'll be water. I don't know. I don't know. I feel like I have less of an issue than I did like when I saw the movie and then when I thought about it post as like the aliens don't like water movie.
And people are figuring it out over the course of the movie. Like the crop circles are in hot, dry places for the most part, and in
I didn't even think about that. But when M. Night Shyamalan's like, I'm going to the lake because of water, I'm like, I love that this guy's close. Like he's right, but he's wrong. But then I guess he is right. I really liked that like he was essentially telling us how to kill the aliens, but he didn't come to it because he's like, I didn't know what to do, so I grabbed the glass of water that I had next to me and threw it in his face, hoping that he was allergic to it. He's just like, we're in a deserty area, they're not near lakes, so I'm going to go there. That's where my body's feeling is right. And then he's right, and that kind of stuff was really cool. But it doesn't, like now we're thinking about it, it doesn't feel like a twist. The way that, I bet you if I watch The Sixth Sense, I'm like, it's not even a twist. Like, I guess it is a twist, but I don't know.
I just want to say that I think if you went back and if you looked at The Sixth Sense for just what it is, it's just a movie, just like this is just a movie, and they're both the best, almost the best versions of what they're trying to be. And Sixth Sense there are as many hokey parts in it as there are in Signs, and sometimes the way he shoots things leans it more towards the comedic when it shouldn't be. And when you see something like The Happening where he's gone so far over that line that the whole movie is that.
It just, yeah.
And you see those little things kind of creep in at moments, even in, what he's trying to do in that last scene is kind of slow everything down and give you like a clear... He's letting you process all the information in signs, because there's kind of a lot to put together in that last part of the movie, and he wants to give everything breathe. And I think he gives it a little bit too much time to breathe, and it starts to come off. Slow, yeah. And in 2002, like that,
breakneck pace.
Well, yeah, I mean, as a kid watching it in the cinema in 2002, I wasn't thinking any of that shit. Like,
no, of course not. Yeah,
it's probably a better film for like a teenager to watch who's getting into movies, and it's a really good, pretty succinct, pretty easy to follow, pretty bloodless, and pretty scary still.
Yeah, if you're watching this at 10, it would probably fucking freak you out. Or whatever age is appropriate.
It set the bar of what, like, I expect from a movie in regards to setting up and paying off and really illustrating like how you put a story together and how the characters should work together and how their relationship should impact each other and how the whole thing should kind of come to a crescendo, and how all of the ideas that you're talking about in the movie, you shouldn't be wasting the audience's time. You should always be going back to the central idea of the movie, which are signs, yeah? You're seeing signs in the world, and you're processing them as one of two people, and you can choose to be Mel Gibson at the beginning of the movie or Mel Gibson at the end of the movie, and it's up to you, you know? Really, that's the fundamental, I guess, statement the movie is making. And it's packaging it in this format, and it's packaging it with here's a thing you've come to expect of my work in the last two films that I've done for better or worse. I think it's a movie that is overshadowed by the conversation that grew out of it, which I think is not the conversation M. Night Shyamalan was trying to have. And I think he's actually kind of right in his contempt of the criticism of this movie, and also becomes wrong at the same time later when he doubles down too hard in the other direction. The best thing that he could have done is detach himself and stop listening to all of it.
Which I'm sure is very difficult, though, to be fair.
Of course, because everyone's telling you you're the best at this on the planet, and you're making the best movies, and your movies are making all the money. And then that stops happening, and that would be really hard to come to terms with. And then all of the people that lavish praise and understood everything you were communicating, all of the critics who loved you and adored you have turned on you and are misrepresenting, and the critical reception for Signs was the first kind of, drop off.
Is this generally regarded still pretty highly, or is this
it's
actually
more positive than negative, I would say, but I would say that sentiment has...
It was from here that people have kind of disliked him, which is why I'm able to...
The average person shits on Signs. They don't think it's a good movie because of what happened to his career after, which I just think is...
Yeah, I know. I definitely fell in that camp as well, which is just one of those fascinating... I don't know. It's just... Yeah. I just feel like But like, if you rewatch a few of the other ones, it's hard not to just get on board. Like, as you said, The Happening, you can watch it and be like, oh, this sucks. Or you can go in knowing it sucks and actually have fun with it. So once your career gets to a movie like that, it's hard not to maybe just look back and go, it's all that I can, it's like the same kind of thing as like once I turned on Thrones, I just look back on all of it and I'm like, was it ever good? Is it all bad now? And it's hard not to like just shape your mind, because once you just take a turn on something like M. Night Shyamalan or anything, it's like, and then maybe it just takes some years where you kind of like, I'm over, I didn't even watch Glass, it seems so dumb, but now, due to your high recommendation, my slight interest, and then I've rewatched it, and it blew me away. I was like I didn't love the last 5 minutes, but there's 1,000 reasons why that is, but generally it didn't make me go, ugh, when he's like in the priest costume and the kids are laughing behind the door, and it's all, just that last moment, I was like, I'm uber satisfied. This was fucking sick. Like, it's a really well packaged, tight little like human story about a man who's like, fuck you, God, and then he's like, maybe I'll change my... I don't know. It was such a good story of like acceptance and of like, yeah, just that scene where they're all like outside and they're all like crying and like, no, little Timmy or Jimmy or whatever the fuck their little kid's name is. They're like, he's dead. And then like off screen, he's like, I'm all good. And then the camera goes from their faces down to his face to reveal, he is fine and alive, and the emotion and everything there, it's palpable, and it's like, oh yeah. feel like this is one of Mel Gibson's better roles that I can remember. He's so raw and like the scenes where he's driving. Like, I love the way the flashbacks are integrated, and when they're integrated, it's one of the best aspects of the film, in my opinion. At the perfect emotional moment, it just hits him, and then he just flashes back in the car. That point of view shot of in the car when we just see her kind of waving him down. The cop lights are like doing the red and blue thing, and just as we go in, we've been given enough information. We know what we're being shown. I'm not like, when it cut to it, I'm not like, what is this in the future at nighttime now? I'm like, this is a flashback. This is the moment his wife's dead. It must have been a car crash. And then we get more and more. Then he talks to her for a bit, and it's pretty fucked up, man. I was like, I don't know. I was like, I'm not really a crier in movies, but I was getting pretty like, whew, you know, the waterworks could be coming. But I just very, very raw and gross. Like, you know, like the most awful thing that could happen, I feel, is a, you know, not the most, but it's a very real fear people have of just, you know, I don't know. She's like, I was going for an evening walk before dinner. And it's like, oh no. It reminded me a lot of Devs. Maybe car crashes just freak me out. I don't know. But it's fucked me up. I was like, oh my God, this is such a horror. I know. And sometimes you don't want that like flashback scene. You know, you're like, you said it. You had that moment where you said it. I don't need to see it. But I really enjoyed seeing it right at the end. It really made me go, I don't know. It was. It
almost crosses into an area that like where it doesn't work when he asks the police officer, is this the last time I'm going to speak to my wife? But what keeps it from being too much is just those two actors' performances. And I think it's like earlier in the film, just getting that scene of her coming to the house after they found the crop circles, and just having that little exchange with the family, and like she's already experienced this like horrible grief, and you can tell she's not even really there for the crop circles. She's just
there for him.
And for all of them, and just trying to reinforce,
family,
you know, to the brother, like, you know, it's good that you're here, you are helping, and everything is like, you have to keep trying, and
just keep going.
This poor police officer is just dealing with there's so many police officers just have to deal with these horrible situations all day. And I don't know, that I really like just those two actors in that scene together. Yeah. Where I think that dialogue on paper probably doesn't work as much as it does just them delivering it. Because there's a line, I think it's the line where, is this the last time I'm ever going to speak with my wife?
It doesn't work for you? Yeah.
Well, on paper it doesn't work, but the way they're delivering it, I'm just like, oh my God, I feel it all so much. I feel the weight of it.
Got me good. I was like, oh my God.
Her response is just so, it's also gut-wrenching. And it is all handled really well. And it probably is just what he says earlier in the movie, like, she's dying and it's just the last impulses of her brain firing, but, you know, again, you can choose to think of it that way, or you can choose to think of it in a way where perhaps there was some meaning here. Perhaps we got through this situation. Maybe we wouldn't, if she was alive and the brother wasn't living there, and none of the, you know, and the little girl never developed the complex of putting water everywhere because she didn't lose her mum, and the family, if everything was working, you know, maybe the kid doesn't have panic attacks and asthma attacks, and like all of these things, they might not have survived the alien invasion if she lived, you know, which is like, I guess to move past it and to move on, you have to kind of rewire yourself, and you almost have to, I don't want to say lie to yourself, but maybe you do. You know, maybe sometimes that's what the best thing is to do for everybody. To be supportive of your community, to be able to be the police officer who walks in and reassures everyone and makes everyone feel good. And I don't know.
I think when you summing up with what you just said then, with all those things and the way they connect and the way it is, it's just so funny because when he picks up the bat, I kind of was just a bit like, oh, it's like the 80s horror film kind of.
What's
like
the term for the Chekhov's bat?
Chekhov's gun, yeah. So the Chekhov's bat, yeah.
He says earlier that he has it hanging on the wall when he's...
Yeah, he's like, I have it literally hanging on the wall. But it just felt like a bit like I was kind of like, oh yeah. Yeah, like it just felt it was kind of almost neatly wrapped. But the way you're phrasing it...
He chose to take that out of it. He
No,
could
no,
have-
no, but and it didn't occur to me that he's only staying there and could only use the bat because she's gone, and that adds a tragedy and a tragic and a horrific truth to that he is semi-implying that they wouldn't have survived if they hadn't gone through this tragedy already, which makes it so much tighter and so much more clever. And it's more than I gave it credit, and I didn't actually really
Mel
process
Gibson's a
it properly
priest.
that
He's
way.
not an aggressive guy. He doesn't have that streak in him. He probably
He's not going to beat
He
someone
wouldn't have
to
been
death
able to
with a baseball
bludgeon
bat.
4 aliens or do.
No, that's awesome actually. Yeah, I think maybe even just the shot placement of like, there's a few shots where his fingers kind of crawl up the bat, and it's a bit like, here's the heroic moment where I'm the man with the bat and I'm going to beat you up. But it's not all that. I think there's just, as you said with the alien, maybe a shot or two here and there, a second less, here and there.
A little
and
more
then I would have been like,
makes it perfect.
yeah, because that scene where he's in the crops and you see the slender, tiniest part of the leg creep back into the crops, I fucking screamed. I was like, oh! I love that stuff. That's so good.
Can we talk about maybe the which is commonly referred to as the best scene in the movie, is the video footage of the children's birthday party. The scene where Joaquin Phoenix is watching the footage from
Losing his mind.
yeah,
It's so good.
watches the footage of the birthday party in Mexico, I think, and we see something rustling in the bushes. I love all the kids running in front of the camera and trying to get around it. Like, all these little details really like sell it. Like, the lighting isn't all perfect, and then when we actually see the alien for the first time, the first decent look we get of it is probably, I would say, if it's not the most effective shot of the alien, the one you referred to earlier, the leg in the crop field, is the most effective. It's one of the two.
I like the leg one because we're in the
You
crops.
almost miss it. I
No,
love
dude,
that.
you fucking you have to. Yeah, like I think you lose 40% of the audience 100% of the time, every time, miss it. It's so, but maybe not. It's so in the corner, but it's so perfectly like lit, but lit in that clever way. It's brilliant, I think that. But the next time is like the reveal. That's a we're seeing the leg. It's a semi-reveal. The proper reveal is so satisfying at that point in the film. And if we're not watching a character like Joaquin Phoenix, watch. Like he's like getting up off his seat. He's like, fucking show me the alien! Show me the fucking alien!
And when he
like,
sees it, he
where-
goes, oh!
It's
And
like, oh, I wish I hadn't seen it! Oh!
his reaction
Like,
is
yeah, it's
so visceral,
it's so real.
it's so real. It sells it, and I
Yeah.
remember the punch of seeing it in the cinema. I was terrified. that is really what got me. I think is obviously all the stuff in the cornfield is excellent. The sound design's excellent. Like it really basically like walks right up to him at one point, and
he drops the
he drops the torch, but they're camouflaging into everything. So there are even times in the movie where you see it and it's actually just kind of hidden in the frame, like when the hand is coming through the coal chute in the basement. The wide shot, the hand there is there the whole time.
Right, is it? Yeah, that's
You
awesome.
if you're looking for it because you know what's going on,
You can see it.
and the found footage specifically, you can see the alien crouching in the bushes, camouflaged in with the bushes,
Oh, cool! Really,
which
yeah,
is
that's
why it
wild.
looks green as it walks past, because it's still camo.
Yeah.
And if you look at it, it looks frightened. It looks
Yeah, it's all like ooh, yeah.
And then, but when it walks out, it kind of strikes that pose with the freeze frame on that makes it really
gives a
seem
death
threatening.
stare. It's like, yeah.
And then just before it gets up and walks past, which recontextualizes, they're kind of stranded in a as more hostile world than
Maybe they expected, yeah.
they're hostile to us, but they're operating really.
We probably still outnumber them as well. Like
we absolutely
like those kids.
yeah.
If those kids wanted to, those 20 kids watching that video probably could have killed it. You know, like that's just how people work. We can outnumber things. I think
he gets overpowered into the closet. They talk earlier in the movie about the fact that, you know, their brains have evolved. They're probably not the strong. I mean, it does. They do obviously have incredible athletic ability, but I think you have to go with the assumption that they're probably about as strong as a dude. You know, it takes them a little while to break in through the boarded.
They're not bloody like Terminators or anything like that, where just smashing through doors. Like, we lock doors and they're like, oh, how do I get through? You know, like, which is, I don't know, it's
the
different.
Scare
it's
is in the mystery of not knowing, of filling all of these things in, and what we think we know about alien movies in general is that they're going to overpower us and just, you know, they're more technologically advanced, so in every way they're just going to steamroll over us like War of the Worlds. But it's not that. You know, you can overpower one and trap it in the, you know, it's just another it's just another biological life form that has weaknesses and you know, is probably seeing things completely differently than we are and is there to do a specific thing. The scene is very effective. I think it's propped up by a really engaging reaction from Joaquin Phoenix.
But also the kids, like the whole environment of them all. They're all
screaming after.
Yeah, like they're all so excited to see it. There's like this palpable, like, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? And then they all see it and they're all like, no, too much. What the fuck? And I love, it's like, because your way is building, it's building. And I think you as the audience know we're going to get some form of glimpse here. I was getting that sense. And that just the filmmaking, it's so brilliantly set up though, where you don't get it. And like, then you run around to the other door, all the kids in the way. And then it's like, suddenly it's like, I'm here, fucking it, like gives the death stare and you're like, oh my God. And then it's a perfect scene. It's so fucking awesome when you're like, I mean, I'm just going to presume this, but you've done some kind of Googling because you're like one of the most famous scenes or the most famous scene in the movie. And it probably is my favorite scene. Man, yeah, I really did like when Mel Gibson had the this is what the movie's about scene with his brother. When he's like, you're one or two people. And he's like, you're that type of person. And then he doesn't say what type of person he is. Then right at the end, he's just like, you're fucking wrong. You're a fucking piece of shit idiot. You're fucking wrong. And you're like, oh, here's the other one. Obvious. I mean, we knew that, but that's
But the way he frames it, he says, do you feel confident? He goes, yeah. And he's like, well, then it doesn't matter. So just, like, because he's already thought through it all in his head. And he's just at a point where, you know, people, and you do get that when everything isn't going your way, it's easy to be the woe is me person. Oh, and that's fine for people to go through, but then at a time it does start to grate. And then people like your brother are just going to be like, hey, can you pull your fucking head in and raise your kids? And sometimes you need that, Like, you can't give up. You can't do everyone's final meal right now. Yeah, which is what he does. He does what do you absolutely want? What's your final? Because he's given up at that point in the movie. He's like, you get spaghetti, you get mashed potatoes. No,
we're having cheeseburgers with bacon.
What his brother's like, we need to eat quick and get our shit together. That's what he says. His brother's right. That's what they need to do. They need to eat something quick, nutritious that'll get them through. They need to not fuck around. And then obviously, just the fact that he can't keep it all together, the family know. And it just breaks down into this big emotional scene. You know, it doesn't even seem like they really eat the food.
No, they don't. He steals half their food, tries to eat it, then they all cry hug. Actually, that's probably my favorite scene. He hasn't done any of the dishes. So he's just like, he's given up, That's what you do if you think it's your last night. You make a massive mess. You make 15 different things. Yeah. You try and make everyone as happy as they're going to be because you think you're going to die. And it's kind of tragic and... It's so good.
Yeah, I love it.
It's such a good movie. It's kind of a bizarre movie because it's like, I don't know. It's like, part of me is like, before I was like, you need that alien getting hit with a baseball bat fight scene. But I'm just thinking about it. I'm like, I don't know. Would have it worked better if they just... But I don't know because...
It works
I love that he...
Just a bit of trimming,
No, just a bit of trimming maybe, because I actually really love it. It's so, like, he gives up, he has his fucking Last Supper dinner thing. He ends up eating everyone else's food angrily. They all break down crying. He, like, grabs his brother and, like, throws him into the hug, and it's like, oh shit, like, this is fucked. And then they just kind of wake up and it's like, oh, I guess it wasn't our last night. And that's just so powerful, like, alone. And, like, it's such a cool movie that the aliens are so... It's not really, like... It is about them, but they're such a peripheral bloody thing.
Absolutely.
Until that
That's
last
the right
second
word.
when it's like, look at me, I'm not in the peripherals anymore. I'm right in the... And he's still lit really well almost all the time. But it's, I don't know. I think I still need it. I still need some kind of baseball. Because even the way they shot those action sequences at the end, the one that I really want to mention that I think is probably the best shot sequence in the movie is it suddenly just follows some really bizarre shots. Like, he gets captured by the alien coming out of the grate or whatever. Yeah, and it just, the flashlight gets hit off someone's hand and we just follow it hitting the ground, moving about for way too long. Like, not in a bad way, like the perfect amount of time, but a really extended time, like not just 2 seconds. It's like the whole fight scene. We don't know what the fuck has happened. And I'm like, did they get the kid? Are we going to cut back and the kid's dead? Like, what horror have we missed via this light? And then, I don't know, it was just really interesting filmmaking decisions. And that's simply because he's like, I cannot shoot them struggling with this alien because that will look dumb. And it would have looked dumb. But it not only didn't look dumb, it was just so, like, interesting, I suppose, is the word. Like, I was just like, what the fuck? Like, what's the emphasis on this? I don't know. I just thought that was a really cool choice.
The theater of the mind is what he's doing.
Yeah,
he's giving you a bit of sound design. He gives you a couple of feet running past. You can kind of roughly, someone's scrambling with the alien, I guess, and someone's pulling the kid back. He's like, I've got him. You hear just little flashes, but it would be chaotic as well. And you don't really know what's going on. I love when he knocks the light out and then we just kind of seeing everything through the perspective of him shining the torch on everyone.
the bit where he grabs the axe and because he's so like not excited, but he's so like scared or whatever. He just grabs the axe and he's just having to smack the light off. Very funny. I love that stuff. That's clever use of, like, I don't know, that could totally play really poorly in a bad film, I think. You'd be like...
This movie is very funny too. I think there's enough... there are moments of...
Like genuine
levity.
humor? 100%.
Yeah. And
every time they cut to them with the funny hats on, it's so good. And then it cut to Joaquin Phoenix. He's got the hat on at one point. The way it would just smash cut to them, it was really... You're right. There was actually some very funny moments. It's a good film.
Yeah.
It's a good film.
It is. It's really good. Yeah. They develop everyone's...
Really
you care about everyone. You know where everyone is. You know what everyone's thinking. You feel the frustration of his son. I mean, he's just sick of his dad doing what his dad's doing. Everyone's a bit frustrated with him. He's, I don't know. I think it's all pretty brilliant. And I don't know more... I honestly don't know, like, people who don't like this film... I don't know what you want out of a movie. Because this gives me almost everything I want. Yeah? The payoffs, the suspense, the humor, like falling in love with all the characters. The direction is just so precise. The sequences are so simple, but so chilling. There's just a scene where they climb on a car with a baby monitor and it's...
Oh, that's such a good moment. Yeah, the bit where they're all out, like when their hands are first connected, and he's like, I don't believe in any of this stupid shit. And the kids are like, don't you fucking take your hand off your brother, Dad, or we will disown you. And then they're all clambering up, and there's that kind of, it almost reminded me of all the guys trying to put up the flag in that classic American photo of war or whatever. Yeah. And they're all kind of joined together, all pushing one person up.
And then the signal becomes just clear, and for a while you just
so
hear the
good
shattering aliens.
Such a great moment. That could be my favorite scene. That scene, I was like, that. I think that was the scene where I was like, I don't think I can hold M. Night Shyamalan to the gutter the way I did before today. Like, genuinely.
Because he is capable of...
No, he's so good, man. He can make a movie. This is why people got sad that he got bad, because he was making movies this good. And I think that's just what happens. If you're good, it's the Dark Knight thing. That line is probably the most true moment of line of any movie ever made. If you don't die a hero, you're going to be the villain.
You're going to live long enough to see yourself.
Live long enough, yeah. If you don't die the hero, you live long enough to be the villain. it's just too true, man. And I feel like I'm guilty of that on almost all creators. Like even Tarantino, I'm like my favorite guy in the world, but now I'm like, stop putting 100 awful people in a room and then having them all kill each other. It's like, stop doing it, you know? But it's like, it's only because his films were so good.
He seems aware of that mantra, which is, I guess, why...
But then he still does it.
Yeah. Well, that's why he wants to do 10. Yeah.
Oh, right, because he's like, I've only got one more schlick in me.
Yeah.
Or two.
Or like the best directors only really have maybe 10 good films. That's kind of what he says, and it's probably like 10 movies. That's
so many movies.
two years it takes to make a movie, sometimes 3. 10 movies. That's a 20, 30 year period. That's probably the amount of time that you're going to be really good at anything. No matter what it is, you've got a window of time, and you change and you become a different person every few years, really, if you're thinking about things and being reflective and doing all the things you should be doing and trying to figure out if you're person A or person B.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's why the film does work, because as soon as you were like, oh, you're kind of reading it as person A, I'm like, that's true. Like, I definitely don't believe in miracles
because it is dumb.
In general sense.
I concede it, but the movie is saying take the dumb things
which is awesome.
And run one of two ways. And yeah, I love watching people kind of... I mean, I guess M. Night, he just should have been a little bit more humble with the reaction to the film and realized that the point he was... The point he made so effectively became so true of the criticism of his movie that he shouldn't have been fighting it. He should have gone, oh, I was right. I was right the whole time. I called it in my movie, and people watched my movie and watched me talk about these things and still did it. Yeah?
Yeah, because until you summed it up, I'm like, oh my God, I literally fell into that like hole. And then you summed it up, I'm like, oh, no, that's pretty awesome actually. Because that's exactly how I felt. I was like, it's all too dumb, too much a coincidence. Oh, Jax, you dumb cunt. That's the point of the fucking film. Idiots.
And the thing, I think the thing that people need to take away is that, he could have walked into that room and not had that realization in that moment and put all of those things together, and it might have all gone okay, but he would not have refound that sense of faith that he had he not put it all together in that... If he wasn't standing in that room in that moment with the bat on the wall, with his brother just walking in, with an alien there, with everything fell into place, and he's standing in a room filled with glasses of water, his son has been poisoned by an alien, and his strong brother-in-law is standing right next to a fucking baseball bat. If you don't walk out of that a man of faith, what is it going to take?
Yeah. No, so true. That's
and it's silly and it's dumb and it's perfect.
Yeah, I think this is a good case of like, kind of reminds me of when you sum up Arrival, and I'm like, I wish I saw the movie you saw. But I feel like with this, I saw the movie, acted one way, and you've just made it clearer that one way is intentional. Like, he's creating a divide in the audience where you're going to read it in A or B, and the crux of the movie is characters being A or B, which is so... I don't know, man. It's like, I feel like you've made me appreciate the movie quite a lot more. Because I loved it. I was like, this is really good. But he grabbed the bat and I was like, is this dumb now? But I wasn't like out.
Yes,
I was like, I was so satisfied. But that's the point.
Be
exactly.
Dumb
yes.
and profound.
Well, all things are dumb. So they just, it's whether or not they work for you, right? That's what I've come to realize. Of all things.
That's right. It's a spectrum. On one end of the spectrum is signs, and on the other end is the happening. Yeah?
Yeah.
All movies are somewhere between.
M. Night Shyamalan is the spectrum of good filmmaking and bad filmmaking. He is the filmmaker. You're either going to land or you're going to fail the same as him. That's awesome. Yeah,
I'm trying to think if there's any other tidbits. One little point is just a little plot detail that I think is like another little character building moment is when the dog starts wheeze itself inside. Mel Gibson says, "We should go see Dr. So and so," and his son says, "He doesn't treat animals." Yeah. And then later in the movie, we see that the veterinarian in the town is the person who killed his wife, which is why he doesn't want to take the dog to the vet.
Oh my God, I love it.
Yeah, which is another. There's just so many little tidbits like that sprinkled
so
throughout
real.
the movie.
That's such a real thing. That's so cool. I actually love that.
Yeah.
That's like you're not red herring. But, when you just put something in the movie so that later you're like, ooh, that's just such a good seed to plant. I suppose is a good way to put it.
The whole opening is just that, really. All of these seeds being sprinkled everywhere. Production design, character, like just the interactions with people. We're getting like half sentences and people are cutting each other off and we're not getting the whole picture. But actually we are. Like it's all really there. Like by about the midway point, we've been delivered the whole picture already, which is why the heavy-handedness at the end, I guess, is just if he was a little bit more comfortable that people would, you know what, I can't even say it because so many people didn't even get the film with the heavy-handedness. I can't even say that what he did was wrong because people still, even cutting to the flashback in that moment again, getting the wife saying it all again, cutting back into the room, getting the scene of them on the couch earlier, like even getting it all, here's what my movie's about right now, like all at the end packaged together. A lot of people still didn't walk out having it delivered, so it might have even been production notes as he's making the movie, like, oh, actually, I don't think people are going to connect this stuff. Let's cut back to it,
That's probably, I would imagine, the reason those moments are in films always.
Yeah, because often, we might not be making the connection here. Let's make sure everybody in the audience gets it.
And it's cinematic shorthand that we're allowed to do this. People get, like, for instance...
Yeah, no one writes that in a script, do they? No one writes cut back to scene...
Cut back to the scene I put in the movie so this scene makes sense? No, they don't do that. Because the reason the scene is earlier in the movie is so that now at this point we're like having these discussions and we're like, remember the bit where they foreshadowed the... Yeah, it's... You put A in so that C is just there or whatever, right? So for me, this kind of reminds me of the biggest, the most egregious remember the scene is in... Probably one of my favorite movies ever. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is just the best thing ever. But 2 minutes after a character is like, it's all a leap of faith, Miles. It's all a leap of faith. He has like a montage of characters throughout the movie saying shit, including that line, which someone said to him 2 fucking minutes ago. Not in real, like in the movie. 2 minutes. The movie's not a force. Like it's insane, and it makes no sense. And I feel like when I realized it, the 7 to 23rd time I'd seen the movie, I was like, "Oh, that's no good. That's no good at all." But
there's something so much more fulfilling about discovering tidbits like that yourself, as opposed to having them pointed out to you by the filmmaker.
Can you imagine if in Shaun of the Dead, the last 40 minutes were them doing the bits, but then also being like, "Remember?" From that bit in the first 40 minutes of the movie.
There's so much, yeah.
That's the whole movie. It's like one movie, and then it replays the movie again. But it's the same. It's like 2 movies in one. But it's like he's like up on your left. Remember, like when we were playing a video game, and I said up on your left, and you shot a gun in the video game at the start, and Simon Pegg's like, yes, I do remember. Like that's what it is. I think it's very, I don't know, but I'm sure there are lots of movies where they do it where I'm like, I think in Lord of the Rings, the first one is like, Frodo, I've got all the wisdom and everyone wishes their life wasn't shit, but sometimes it is. Get over it, Frodo. And that replays right at the end of the movie when he's holding the ring and like looking out the water before Sam comes. And that totally fucking works for me. That's that's a tear-jerking moment where I'm like, oh my God, this bloody little hobbit man, it's so good.
Lord of the Rings is actually another perfect example of, I think, a filmmaker's sensibilities riding the line between maybe stepping into the hokey and it's
How dare you?
No, hear me out here.
No.
You're about to agree with me.
Oh,
Yeah. Making a big claim, but I mean, it's perfectly represented by Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, where you have the same filmmaker who's followed when all of the elements surrounding the filmmaking aren't working, when the visual effects aren't working, when the action isn't working, when all the elements around it have fallen apart, and all you have left is the hokey slow-mo dialogue between elf and wizard, you're like, oh, this isn't working. This ain't, like, the line between this being fucking ridiculous and being the greatest film trilogy of all time is just kind of these surrounding elements being okay, and then it being an almost unwatchable, like, oh, you're ripping up your legacy experience by the third Hobbit
100%
film.
agree. Yeah, that third one's a fucking disgrace. Yeah, you're 100% right.
I mentioned like a little tidbit that worked in Signs. Another little tidbit I'll mention that occurs a couple of times throughout the film is when you film slow motion in a movie, what you're meant to do is overcrank the frame rate. So generally things are filmed at 24 frames or 25 frames a second in Australia, 24 for classic film. And that is what we're used to seeing played back at 24 frames a second. And what you do is when you film something in slow motion, you film more frames per second so that you can slow it down and the motion blur of the image plays back at the right. So you're slowing it down, but it's playing back at 24 frames. But you're filmed, 50 or 60 frames a second. And now the motion of it works perfectly. There are 2 or 3 shots in the movie where he didn't do that, but he needed the shot to slow right down. It's Mel Gibson up against the door when he's holding it.
Yeah, right. I feel like I remember that happening. I just can't remember when. I remember being like, is the slow-mo weird right now?
It is.
Is that what I'm thinking of?
He didn't... and that is the case where what you're doing is in the editing process realizing that needs to be slow motion. I didn't get enough time of this on the day, so I'm slowing the shot down.
Right.
And there's a few of those moments in the movie, and it kind of just breaks me out of it.
So they did kind of affect the film, because
I just don't like noticing those things,
Yeah, for sure. That's like a kind of a camera thing, and as a cinematographer, you're going to be in the higher percentage of people whose eyes catch those things. And I feel like I noticed, but it really didn't affect me because I couldn't even tell you what moments they were at all. And I saw it today, so I don't know if they're... Yeah, I'm just in defense of the movie, I suppose, is my point.
For sure. It's not something that takes you out unless you're already aware of it kind of going in. So that's absolutely true. But it does, I think, illustrate the point that, movies are... There's like a phrase to it that you write the movie once when you write it, again when you shoot it, and again when you edit it. And
that's very, very true. The edit especially. The edit can really
There's actually a deleted scene, for example. So there's the sequence where the aliens are busting into the house. Mel Gibson tells each of his children a story about when they were born.
I love that shit.
Well, there's actually a deleted scene as they're going into the basement where he tells a third story to his brother, Merrill, about him when he was younger or born or something. I can't remember it. It's been so long since I've seen it.
It had to be when he was born, right? Because that's the other two are when you were born stories.
I think so, but I can't remember. Anyway, I think that's an example of the editing being, maybe I went a step too far here. And this is actually...
1, 2, 3 didn't need to be.
Yeah, just the 2 kids is fine. And there's also an entire sequence cut out where the attic door starts to open.
And we see some alien.
No, but we see... so the brother runs up the stairs and holds it closed. And then Graham, Mel Gibson, has to pull a shelf under the door so it can't open, and it's smashing against the shelf, and they realize, this is only going to hold for a minute. We need to get out of here, and that's how they go to the basement.
Okay. Yeah, not necessarily necessary.
For sure, yeah. It seemed like there at that sequence that there was quite a bit of tightening done to speed it up and get them down there, and then
that was all good then. The less alien action, I think the film works better because it's those moments where he talks to his kids just before he thinks they are all going to be killed by an alien, and he's like, son, remember the time your dead mother looked in your eyes and you just stared at each other? It was the most amazing moment of my life, the most amazing moment of your mum's life. And it was just, I'm making it sound like I don't like those scenes. I love them so much. It's just so, I love seeing, or not necessarily even seeing, I don't need to see this deleted scene. I love hearing that they had a deleted scene with Joaquin Phoenix. Because that's, to me, I'm like, that's exactly what you do. You'd be like, the whole point of this movie is Mel Gibson realizing these moments before they have a non-confrontation with aliens, go into a basement and wait to die. So he tells them all a story from when they were born, from their dead mother. And for me, there was probably 5 seconds where he was telling that last story, the second time, where I was like, maybe you should hurry up with the story and go kill the alien. So if he then grabbed the daughter, pushed her to the side, and then grabbed the brother and going like, I now have a 2-minute story to tell you, dear brother, I'd have been like, you fucking jumped the shark, you idiot. You know? And so just even hearing that they had that scene, shot it, and deleted it is like, that's exactly what you're saying. Editing is editing. When you make the edit, you are also editing your entire story. And you might read it in the script and be like, an ABC works perfectly. But then when you're in there in the movie, and the pace of a movie with the alien, they've landed, they're there, and the pace of the movie has a feeling that it creates on its own by being moving picture, and that makes a really different feel. Yeah, man, I genuinely think if he'd gone to Joaquin Phoenix and told a third story, he could have botched almost the whole film for me. Whereas it was right on that perfect line of sentimentality and kind of hokey heartwarmingness, but also alien action and thrill and all that stuff. It really worked for me, I guess is my point. But I don't think it would have worked at all if it had taken one more step into hokey land. So it's just really cool to hear that, because it's like the editors totally knew what they were doing. You know, like that's I love. It's like when you showed me years ago. I think it's still the most iconic, just because the movie is for me. But those edit choices George Lucas's wife made of cutting all that trash stuff at the Star Wars is just so like, yeah, the whole thing. That video on YouTube, everyone should go watch it. It's the most amazing, mind-boggling. If you're a fan of Star Wars, which everyone is, I mean, aren't they? But it's just like, it makes you realize how close it was to being a dumb. You know how people kind of like the movie Dune, but I haven't seen it and I've not heard great things, and it's just this hokey sci-fi kind of thing. You know,
that's what Star Wars could have been.
That's exactly what that's exactly what I was going to say. That's what and I feel like watching her edit it and hearing the changes, those big and the scene where they talk about Darth Vader, then we cut to Darth Vader. It's like, it wasn't like that. What the fuck? Who was editing this? What the fuck? Yeah. Why was it not flowing well? Like, why?
Do you know why? Because George Lucas left to his own devices.
He's a bit of a dumb gun. Yeah.
Well, he makes the Phantom Menace.
Yeah. Which has those.
Yeah, it has all the issues that Star Wars had. That he didn't have his wife there being like, "Don't do that, George." Because he divorced her after Return
Can't you
of the
visually
Jedi.
imagine that on set as well? Don't do that, George. And he's like, oh.
Even the opening crawl wasn't his idea. Like, that was Brian De Palma wrote it.
Oh, really?
He got all his director buddies in.
So good.
Almost all of them were like, George, this is the worst thing you've ever made. What the fuck have you done? Steven Spielberg's the only guy in the room going, actually, I think this is pretty good. Make some,
They're all like, you shut up, you idiots. So funny.
What makes the sequence in the cornfield work is that you have a director with a very clear vision and a very good idea mixing all of the elements of filmmaking together to give you a really, really gripping, suspenseful sequence that builds and just gives you enough to keep you even more invested in the movie, get to the next scene, you know, right up until the end, which is what this movie does. It sustains its pace all the way through, which again is like, it's this thing of, if you enjoyed the entire ride, this entire roller coaster ride, all this is the suspense, the thrills, everything going on here, but then the water thing at the end didn't work for you, the whole movie still worked.
No, that's the main takeaway I'm taking from this watch, is that I still don't love the end. Just like, there's a certain shot where he like hits the alien, the water's like slow-mo tipping on him. He's like, oh, and it's like, just that itself, I'm like, I think that could have been done somehow better. But honestly, 99% of the movie is so good. It really is so well crafted. From alien on the roof being a creepy Santa Claus, then look at my slender leg in the grass, and then look at me, I'm at a party. Ooh! It's like every alien moment is so good. And then you get your rewatch value where you're like, actually, he was at the little bottom, and all these little things, it's all there. And I think it's easy to swing a bat at something and be like, it's dumb, water, we're made of water, why did the aliens come? And then you're done. The conversation is easy, you understand it, you understand what's wrong with it, and you don't have to think, you know, it's an easy crux to fall on and be like, it's dumb because of this. Which I totally feel like I was in that camp before. I'm not saying anyone's wrong thinking that, I'm just kind of, why did the world turn? Why was this maybe the moment? And I think it's just because it's an easy thing, like The Happening. The wind is the bad guy, that's dumb. It's easy to just say that, and then you're like, well, I guess that does sound dumb. But when you watch this movie, it's not a movie about aliens who can't handle water. You know what I mean? Like, it's not at all what it is. It's like a sad priest movie, man, faith story. Which is so good, and it is so compelling.
Grappling with grief and his loss of faith, and rediscovering it, and doing what's best for his family, and yeah, like growing as a person, and all of and
coming to terms with his grief and learning that he has to, otherwise he's fucked.
It's all framed within a alien invasion story we have never seen done this well, this effectively, this succinctly, this small scale, but still feels so gripping and engaging, and that like, I don't know, like we keep saying, every sequence works except some stuff at the end.
And that's not even all of it. If all of it didn't work, I don't think anyone would like this movie, because it would just fall flat. It's just like, it's just an editing thing, you know? I think you could take 35 seconds out and you'd be done, you know? Not even, maybe. I'd have to rewatch it you know, you just sit there in the editing suite and kind of, you could play with it. You totally could. And not in a like, fuck, M. Night Shyamalan doesn't know how to edit his films way. Just in a, maybe even just in the sensibilities of this movie being 20 years old now. Like, it's fucking old. Film's almost as old as, no, what the fuck? It can't be 20 years old then. What year did you say?
2002.
2002.
Yeah, almost. 18 years old.
Yeah, fuck yeah. 18 years old, yeah, it's still super old, yeah. Yeah, I mean, sensibilities of just time changed so much with pacing and stuff anyway, so maybe those things are just an age kind of thing, which is just a thing that films just have, you know, they age in different ways, like CGI ages, pacing ages, character motivation and even just like sensibilities can change, whereas I don't think anything changes, maybe a slight pacing issue with action, you know, but that, I mean, I don't know. Just saying words. Who knows? I was just trying to think of other movies. I'm like, I bet you wouldn't say The Matrix is slow paced, which probably came out at the same time, no? So maybe it's not that itself, but
that was 99, one of the great years of films.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Have you thought about any other lockdown-esque movies, or what you want to do next?
Maybe we should pick another We're Stuck in a House movies then. But not,
because like, we're all stuck in a house. It's so relatable. We gotta. And actually, this, like, some of the parts that I enjoyed that I hadn't enjoyed in the past was like consuming news footage, and we've been doing, like, I keep watching our premier Daniel Andrews tell us about how fucked everything is,
dude,
how many more people are getting infected, and it's just like, this is what you do, and you go and bounce off other people, you know, and have conversations, and sometimes you'll talk to someone and you'll be like, oh, you've gone a little too into the deep end here. And watching the family go through that too, it solidified things that I didn't even know I loved about this movie until all of this has happened 18 years after the fact, you know?
No, 100%. Like watching a film that has these like just apocalyptic-esque things, especially with I just distinctly remember in Deep Impact being like certain moments, like them being like, everyone listen to the news now. We're going to literally tell you what you can or cannot do and who will survive and who will be allowed in the bunker. And I was just like, this totally wouldn't have worked for me 3 months ago. Whereas now it's just so real. And I'm like, I believe that because we turn on the news now and you're like, oh, well, I guess it's masks now, you know? And like you hear things and it's like, well, that fundamentally changes my 8-hour workday now, or this or that, or just everything. And those things can seem a bit like, it's a bit not unrealistic, but you watch a movie where that happens and you're like, yep, it's a movie. Whereas now it's like, no, that's what happens. You look at the news to find out, you turn on, you're like, I guess, like that bit where Mel Gibson's like, let's turn on the TV and see if we can maybe, you know, let's just look. And it's like, yeah, because that's what you do. You got to find out what's bloody going on. And it can feel so much more real, which has made watching all these movies in Lockdown 1 and now in Lockdown 2 to like, it really shapes them in such a different way. Such a raw, palpable way.
Because there is a point in time where you are confronted with the fact that Mel Gibson is confronted with, which is, you know, at a certain point, all you have is like the place that you go back to every day, and then when you have to spend like a majority of your time there without other people, you really start to take a lot more notice of everything that you have, and like what you want and where you want things to go, and you know, it puts things back into perspective, and like just little things makes me realize like I'm glad I spent more money on this thing, and that I have some nicer things in my house, and you know, and then I've watched people who are like, just, you know, who cares about stuff, which there's an element of that's good, you know, don't be too materialistic, but at the same time you want to have good stuff that works, because at the end of the day sometimes you just have to go home. And you're just going to be stuck at home, and we're all going to be stuck at home, and we might have to board it up, and that's all we're going to have. And it's something very true and confronting, and just thinking about movies in one room, I'm just trying to rack my brain. I'm like, Saw, the original Saw is probably like
so my list of films before you suggested Hard Candy, and then this film, was I had Disturbia and Rear Window as a double package. Then I had Saw 1 and Saw 8, because I thought you either do all the Saws, one of the Saws, or 2, just because doing 2 is a fun like comparison. And I was like, if we did the first and last, it would be, look where it started, look where it got. Isn't that insane? Or we could just do one Saw. Then there's The Platform on Netflix, which appears to be in a room. There's Cube, there's Circle. There's so many we're in a room at horror.
Have you seen Cube?
Yeah.
Have you seen Cubes 2 Hypercube?
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Oh.
Not a fan.
No, I was at the time, but I don't, like, maybe my memory of it is that it was real good, and it's probably not.
I think it's 50-50 good and atrocious. Yeah. I think I definitely loved it when I watched it.
There were some cool concepts in it. I remember being like, oh, wow, this is... Like, I can't believe they took the concept of this first movie and they actually did a half-decent job. Oh, my memory is so vague. It's probably not.
I couldn't tell you anything that happened. I just know that there's cubes and there's deadly traps. It's like Saw on crack.
The first one feels like very metallic and like real, and like it's wire, and it's like all very practical and based in reality. And then the second one becomes very science fiction.
I think there's a bit of CGI violence
and like
as well,
time travel, and like
God, I don't remember that. That's awesome.
Yeah, my memory is like they look into another room and it's a guy who's already dead or something. I don't.
Jesus.
But it's also called Cube 2 Hypercube, so how good can it be?
Amazing. What are you talking about? It's the greatest title in the world.
I'm just looking at the cast. I recognize none of them.
Yeah, no, there's no way you would.
I never saw Cube 0.
Is that the third one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've seen that, and I think that one's potentially the one with the CGI violence, and it gets pretty dumb. but maybe has a cool ending, maybe. But I could be missing that up with Terminator 3.
I remember the first one being like a good solid, like...
It's like Saw. It's really tight. It's a really good film. And it just spawned a bunch of nonsense. Yeah. I don't know. There's so many stuck in a room. I don't know, like any of the ones that I've mentioned keen for or someone else.
Like Rear Window is one that I wouldn't mind watching because I haven't watched it.
Oh, you've not seen it?
No.
Oh, maybe we should just do Rear Window then, yeah.
Yeah, because it's like a staple of cinema that I've just missed.
Yeah, we should definitely do it. Would you like to do it with the modern remake or just do it as separately, alone?
Is there... So Disturbia...
So Disturbia is a Shia LaBeouf movie. That's essentially the modern remake of an Alfred Hitchcock
I
classic.
also haven't seen it, so...
I'd be pretty keen just because I feel like I'm going to like the Shia LaBeouf one more. Yeah. Well, like, I think I've seen both, and I definitely liked that one more at the time. But I was also probably of the age where the modern remake of Rear Window is made for a 15-year-old version of me, you know? Like, it's quicker, it's modern. He's wearing a stroke shirt or whatever. No, that's Transformers. It doesn't matter. There's definitely a scene where he's doing a thing and like a pop song, like a rock pop song of a band and a song I love plays, and he's like trying to like do just something at the start of the movie, and it's like, you know, like that's the type of movie. It's like a popcorn Hollywood version of this classic movie. And I just think that I definitely remember liking it more, but I'm sure it's not as good, you know. I mean, I don't know. I guess it's whatever. Who knows? But I'd be keen for that, just as an interesting double feature, which I suppose I won't explain why it's a double, like it's, and why it fits into our apocalyptic theme.
Oh, I mean, I'm aware of the movies.
Oh, okay.
To a degree, I especially Rear Window.
You've seen the Simpsons movie, the episode?
Oh yeah. I think. Oh, well, I would have because I've seen all of the Simpsons, but so my memory of it will probably be like kind of that half. But I don't. That never really stops me from like generally. I can still see whether the thing is for me or not. You know.
Yeah.
A lot of people get very bogged down when like something's parodied it a lot. Another thing with Signs is actually a very similar thing that happened to Scream, in that you have these two really, I think, like exceptional movies that are doing very different things with their genres that were both became so strangely iconic but loathed and parodied in weird ways that the parodies almost outgrew the original art form, and people can't even see either Scream or Signs for what they are anymore because of Scary Movie 1 and Scary Movie 3.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that, because I haven't actually seen Scary Movie 1 or 2, but I've definitely seen the poster which has the ghost
the movies
face.
It's doing are obscure, and it doesn't actually trample a lot of what people's kind of up-to-date knowledge is. So the second Scary Movie is... It's kind of on its own. It's doing some of it for sure. Like it's picking up things, but like the first one really goes hard after I Know What You Did Last Summer and Scream. But it also, I don't know if it misses the point that Scream is itself a parody of horror.
I was just about to say that. It's like, that's such a... You can't... It's like parodying... It's like Austin Powers parodying James Bond. It's like, most of the jokes in Austin Powers are just the jokes in James Bond. It doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for me at all. It's stupid. It's like calling a vagina a lot or whatever the fuck a stupid sexual name is. It's like, that's the joke in James Bond. So to make a parody movie about Scream, it's like... There's characters in that who are literally like, don't be a virgin, you fucking die. Or no, don't have sex, you'll die. And just... the movie is such a commentary on horror. It's
the same way that I would say Signs is a commentary on the in some ways the invasion movie or the alien. Like everyone in the movie is so aware of pop culture, of the movie's influence, of how people think through these things, and everyone is openly discussing. You know, it's either corporatism or it's all the government are doing whatever, or it's all just to sell soda, or it's it's a recon mission, or it's an invasion, or they might be friendly, or it might be this or that, and everyone's kind of digesting it. And then these movies come along and parody just the superficial elements of each movie and kind of miss the points, but in the same breath undo what the movies are trying to do, because now people can't even see. Although I think it's a particular type of person, and I don't want to sound like a prick, but I gotta say, the type of people, I can't watch Signs because of Scary Movie 3. I mean, you're a bit silly. That's the nicest way I can say it.
No, for sure.
Yeah,
dumb cunt films for dumb cunts. For sure. But at the same time, maybe just for children, because I watched Scary Movie 3 or 4, maybe one, maybe the other, maybe both, and I remember in grade 3 or 4 being like, "That's very funny," and then in grade 6 they made Epic Movie and Date Movie, and I'm like, "What? When did comedy be bad? Why is it bad now?" So they must have been doing something right that they lost, or maybe I just grew up.
I don't even know if it's the same people. I don't know if the Wyan brothers who did the Scary Movies.
Maybe that's the single reason that they get incredibly bad, because
it's just the movie moniker franchise that the association is. I don't
right, because it definitely took a downward spiral. But I remember talking to you, maybe even last time we spoke. But I feel like Scary Movie is like a good gateway drug for children to watch parody stuff.
Good parody, yeah.
Yeah. To get to then watch a Blazing Saddles when they're 15 or 16 and can understand the humor that's being made or done or whatever. Watch the Spaceballs or whatever, which I never loved, but I don't know. I just feel like I just watched something like that, and I'm like, I just want to watch Star Wars. I don't want to watch someone be like, "How stupid Star Wars?" I'm like, "It's not stupid. You're stupid."
Or even a step, like taking a few steps down the parody track, and then you get to something like a Big Lebowski, which is like a kind of neo-noir parody where the detective doesn't give a shit about anything going on in the movie. And is just floating,
literally floating about, like, dude, bro.
I just want my fucking rug, Like, it's so good. Yeah, but that's like a few steps down the path. Like, I remember watching Big Lebowski. My mum has loved that movie ever since it came out. But I remember there was a point where I was just a bit too young for it, and I just remember seeing parts of it and just not even really being. I hadn't seen enough to be able to understand what the movie was going for. You have to have a certain level of knowledge to get to that point. And a Scary Movie is the first step.
Yeah, I think it is, because and they're more of a product of their time. I don't even think you could go back now and show someone who's 12, because they'd be like, what movies are they even referencing? Whereas when I'd seen a War of the Worlds, and I was aware of Signs. Exactly, The Ring, Grudge, just big horror films that were blockbuster Hollywood films in a way. And then just going, we're just gonna fucking make fun of all of them and put it into a tight little story and have fucking huge actors at the time like your Charlie Sheens and whatnot, and just have them be in it for shitty little jokes. And
I think the second one riffs on The Exorcist, which is just a little bit more out of date than all the rest. And it riffs on older movies more. Now that I'm thinking back, a lot of the imagery is coming back into my head, and I'm like, so it's not. That's why the second one, probably as a kid, worked less, because
I hadn't seen the stuff that was coming out at the time.
Yeah, I was just less familiar.
Yeah.
There's a difference between like having watched The Ring and then you watch Scary Movie 3. And then when you watch Scary Movie 2, like, someone's like, oh, this is a riff on The Exorcist. And I'm like, I don't really know what that... Yeah,
if you don't know what that is, it's literally nothing. Because I guess, even though for some reason I was praising these movies, I don't know if I've fully seen them or not, they're not really anything above... If you haven't seen what we're referencing, it's literally nothing. Do you know what I mean? So it's got to be very current, and... I don't know. It just, I feel like I said this last time, but it just reminds me of like probably why I like and why I did at the time like the movies. It's like Van Helsing. It's just that it's just got a bunch of shit. It's like we're getting chased by the War of the Worlds things, and now we're in the ring, and now we're in the signs, but at the bottom there's a well, so it's the ring and signs in one, and it's just such a hodgepodge, or whatever you fucking...
Hodgepodge?
Yeah. Hodgepodge, yeah. Of just stuff. It's just a melting pot, and most people are like, oh, it's too much flavor in this melting pot. It's just grey, whereas I'm like, look at how delicious this grey goop is. You know, Van Helsing and Dracula and Frankenstein and the other one, Jekyll and Hyde, werewolves, things. Yeah, it's just got everything, and it's, I don't know, I kind of love that, which maybe is why I fondly remember Scary Movie, even though I'm sure if I put it on, I could not finish it. There's no way I'd finish one of those movies now, I'd imagine. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe they're not as bad as I remember.
No, I think they are.
They definitely are. They definitely are.
Yeah.
I can remember a scene at the start of, I think it's the fourth one, where Charlie Sheen gets such an erection. I think he's taking pills, but his dick's like the size of his body, and he falls out a window, and I don't know, man. It's like, just thinking about that scene, I'm getting like really stressed out that things like that exist. Like angry and annoyed. Like that was in a cinema and people paid to see it. It's like, what the fuck? what a joke.
So we'll do Disturbia and Rear Window?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that sounds good. I'm keen.
Spoiler Talk is produced by KCBN Studios and Space Kraken Media.